Hello everybody, I'm Zenith and welcome back to In Retrospect, where I take a look at one of the video games or shows from my childhood and see how they've held up after all these years. Now, previously on this show, I did a whole big episode on Kingdom Hearts 1. I had a blast streaming that game in my free time and, getting the Platinum Trophy, 100% completing Kingdom Hearts 1 was a lot of fun, and I had a lot of fun reliving my childhood memories with that first game, and so I also wanted to continue on with Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, simply because Kingdom Hearts 3 is coming out, and honestly, I really need to get ready. First of all, though, before we dive into Chain of Memories, I do want to rectify a mistake that I made in the last video. Kingdom Hearts 1 was not out in 2000. It's not 18 years old. It's a 16-year-old game. It came out in 2002. That was my bad. For some reason, I always remember 2000 as the year that I got my PlayStation 2. I'm not sure why. I think it's some sort of association or whatever, but I got the PS2 and Final Fantasy X and Kingdom Hearts in 2002 that Christmas. So that's my bad, but that's when I got it. That game held up pretty well for a 16-year-old game, still pretty well. There were problems, but I had a lot of fun reliving my memories of Kingdom Hearts 1. Even though there were some issues with the 100%, the Gummy Ship missions were not fun, and the new Rare Heartless were definitely a chore, but I still had a lot of fun. So I sat down afterwards, and I said to myself, alright, Zenith, let's go play Chain of Memories. Now, when I was a kid, I never beat Chain of Memories. I did have a Game Boy Advance, and I played a ton of games on the Game Boy when I was a kid. Like, I was always on it. This was my system of choice because I didn't always have the free time to play the console at home, and we were usually traveling on trips, so I would play Pokemon Pinball, and I would play the Pokemon games on Game Boy from the first generation and Gen 2. I got a lot of use out of Pokemon Gold, Silver, and Crystal. That was my big generation. Although I really loved Pokemon Yellow because you could have Pikachu. But one of the games that I did pick up because I knew that, it was a Kingdom Hearts game on the Game Boy was Chain of Memories. I'm not entirely sure why they decided to put a game on the Game Boy, but, it does make sense from a sales perspective. Game Boy was huge at the time for Nintendo, and so, if you're going to make a video game, if you're going to make a property that's, that you want to sell immediately and you didn't have enough time to make the sequel on any other platforms, you would put it on the Game Boy or the mobile platforms, because to be fair, mobile platforms such as 3DS, DS, and Game Boy all sold well, because that's what all the kids were playing. So if you're thinking from a marketing perspective, and you don't have the time or resources to immediately put out a major game on the PS2, this is where you turn. So, well, I think it is kind of a bad move from a storytelling perspective, because despite the title, Chain of Memories is Kingdom Hearts 2. This is the second game in the series. It has very important story information. This is an important game. Do not skip it. And I'll get into the problems and all the other stuff later, but this is a story that is very important to the series and cannot be skipped. So it's not a side game like everyone else thinks, but, from a marketing perspective, I understand it. From a storytelling perspective, and for people who didn't own a Game Boy, this is really stupid, because there was a lot of people who missed out on crucial information for Kingdom Hearts 2 that was in this game. When I was a kid, I picked it up, and I did not beat it. If I remember correctly, I played up until the Captain Hook fight. I beat Captain Hook in Neverland, and then we got to the final Riku fight, or it was maybe Riku 2, I don't know, because it's been so long since I played it, but it was, I had the Neverland world open, I defeated it, I got to the Riku boss afterwards, and I was so underleveled that I stopped playing the game. Like, I could not beat Riku 2, and I just stopped playing the game, because as a kid, I wanted to play other games that were a lot more fun. And I don't remember too much about the story from when I was a kid, but to be honest, this was not my favorite game back then. I sat down with the Game Boy Advance. I still have my Game Boy Advance SP from back when I was a kid, and I tried to play the game because I still have my original cartridge. And to be honest, the biggest problem that I have with Game Boy games today is the screen is so small. It is hard for me to continue to play the game. Even with that backlit screen for the SP, it's such a small screen. It's very straining on my eyes. I know I'm a very old woman, this is a me problem, but trying to play a Game Boy game at my age now it's like night and day. I don't know what the difference is, but I've just grown to the point where it's very hard for me to play games on my Game Boy Advance SP. I played about a couple hours of the game, and I was having a little bit of fun. The control scheme was it's not really intuitive for the Game Boy. It wasn't bad, but I was getting a few hours in, I was almost past the tutorial, and then I noticed that the red light on my Game Boy Advance SP was blinking. It was blinking red, which is not a good sign. It either means that the SP is finally dying, to which point I turned off my SP because I did not want to destroy it, but it's probably not a good idea to just keep playing it at this point, because the red light is blinking, and that probably means that the battery for the light is going out or whatever, and I don't have any way of getting a brand new Game Boy anymore. They don't make them anymore. So I said to myself, well, Zen, what am I gonna do? So I tried the next best option to play Chain of Memories on the Game Boy. I have a Game Boy player for a GameCube, and both of these were something that I bought online for very, very cheap. This was my first time testing it out, so I didn't know how it was going to go. I got about an hour into the game, playing on the Game Boy player on my TV, which was so much better, and I had a controller in my hand. I was having fun, and then the game just crashed. The game crashed, and I don't know if it's the battery in the Game Boy or if the Game Boy player is bad or something, but the screen cut out. It said insert cartridge into the slot. So there's either something wrong with the disc or whatever. I need to bring this to a store and figure out what's going on. But the thing is, I tried my best to play the original Game Boy version of this game. I own it, but just the technology did not want me to play this game. For whatever reason, every time I tried to play old technology, it just does not work. I don't know why. I need to have somebody as an assistant to help me out with this stuff, because, that's a problem. With that being said, I thought to myself, do I want to emulate the game? And I will say that I plan to emulate it for a stream later down the line. But to be honest, for the moment, I said to myself, I think it's best to move on. Let us not dwell on the Game Boy Advance version of the game. I cannot judge the Game Boy Advance version of the game, and for some people, they really love the Game Boy Advance version of the game. A lot of people really swear by this version of the game. A lot of people really enjoy it, and I've heard a lot of arguments that it's actually better than RE Chain of Memories, which is the PS2 remake that came out in 2008. Chain of Memories came out in 2004, so the Game Boy Advance version came out 2 years after the original game, and then 4 years later, when Kingdom Hearts 2 came out, we finally got RE Chain of Memories for the PS2, and it was later re-released for PS3 and PS4. I never owned RE Chain of Memories on the PS2 simply because it still had the card game mechanics. I liked that they were going to have more cutscenes and all this other added stuff, but I already was having problems with the game as a kid back then, so it's not something I invested my time into. So I couldn't just pull out my copy of RE Chain of Memories for the PS2 since I didn't have it. So I was just like, all right. Well, the original Game Boy Advance game is giving me problems, even though people say it's really, really good, that the core gameplay mechanics are actually better. The only thing that I can judge the Game Boy Advance version of the game on is the controls. I think the R and L trigger on the Game Boy Advance SP just does not work, in my opinion. And this is not just for Chain of Memories, this is a problem with the system in general. If you utilize that in, like, say, Sonic Advance 2, I think was the one that I had. It was either 1 or 2, but Sonic Advance utilized the R and the L buttons, and they just didn't work. Any game for the Game Boy back then that had the R and L triggers, it was just murder on your fingers. It was not intuitive. Plus, you're holding this very small, narrow piece of plastic. And now that I am fully grown, I have big hands. Okay, I have very, very big hands. The Game Boy does not feel very good in my hands if I'm playing it. The Nintendo DS is way, way better because it at least is huge. But then again, I got the Nintendo 3DS XL because, again, I have big hands and it has a bigger screen. So this is what's more comfortable for me. So if I were to play it on anything, it would have to be a bigger system that accommodated my hands, and the Game Boy Advance SP was not that system. And to be honest, the small screen just really, really hurt my eyes after a while. That's all I can say on the Game Boy Advance version. I think the pixel art looks good. I never got into too many battles, so I can't speak for the fighting system or anything on Game Boy Advance. I just remember having a lot of trouble with it as a kid and never finishing it. Flash forward to this year. I had just finished Kingdom Hearts 1. The Chain of Memories thing, I had problems playing it on every single system, but I have the Kingdom Hearts 1.5 HD Remix collection for PS3 and for PS4. I have both of those collections. So what I did was I played the RE Chain of Memories version for PS3, and I streamed the one for PS4. First thing to note is that they really updated the graphics. This looks fantastic both on the PS3 and the PS4 on my HD TV. This looks fantastic, and you can tell that this was fully remastered in HD from the ground up, and the cutscenes that they added, everything looks brilliant. Except for a couple small problems. Now, I'm not sure if this has something to do with the pixelated nature of the PS2 cutscenes or the original or whatever, but the HD cutscenes that they have in the game are great only when they're close up, only when you can actually see the character. Whenever they pull back from the characters, the faces are all blurry and they're all pixelated, and the draw distances do not look good in this game. So that's something to take into consideration. I still think this looks great for a game that's been remastered so many times. And honestly, the HD upgrade is a big help for the game. But I will say that the cutscenes could have been a little bit more polished. I am a little bit miffed every time it pulls away and Larxine's face looks really, really weird, and you can see that her mouth is not moving from these pulled out shots. So I'm just I think it looks fine from my perspective, but it's not going to compete with any PS4 or even any PS3 games of the time. It looks fine, but honestly, Kingdom Hearts 1 looks better. Another problem that this RE Chain of Memories has is because it was made the same time as the PS2 version of Kingdom Hearts 2, there were several things that they took very small liberties on, because you can tell that this game was originally made in Japanese. Why? Because the lip flaps do not match up whatsoever. What do I mean? Well, when you're voice acting to a character, and when a character is supposed to be voiced, and in American translations, they usually try to match up the lip flaps per each dialogue track. That way, like, everything sounds like it's coming out of the character. For Kingdom Hearts 1, and especially Kingdom Hearts 1 Final Mix, which is extremely well handled in this regard, everything is one-to-one. It feels like the character is actually speaking out of these mouths. It doesn't feel like it's been dubbed. Kingdom Hearts RE Chain of Memories is dubbed. Like, they don't even try to hide it. This is very clearly a product they wanted to rush out for the PS2 because Kingdom Hearts was coming out, so they didn't take the time to match the lip flaps, and it is very, very noticeable. And that's one of the biggest issues I have with the cutscenes. I love the cutscenes, but you can very much tell in two different ways that they did not try to match the lip flaps. First of all, the voice direction is a problem, because you get some really great voice actors, but you'll notice that in some cases the delivery is very stilted, and this is not a problem in the case of the voice actors. This is a problem in the voice direction and the fact that they didn't match up the lip flaps, because if you have to match up to the Japanese lip flaps, you can't have the same kind of delivery, because Japanese language has so many different syllables, more syllables, and then you'll have these unnecessary pauses and stuff that, you know, you could totally fix if you just redid the scenes and redid the lip flaps. And so you have Quentin Flynn as Axel, who comes in and he has this really, really nice dialogue, and then he says something that seems off in the way he says it. There's another part where, like, Diz comes in and he says, "You," and then pause, "I've always been watching you." And I'm like, if this was translated a little bit better, he could have just been, "I've always been watching you," and then we wouldn't have that awkward pause. And there's clearly a lot of stuff that, you know, is from the Japanese that they didn't take the time to translate for the PS2 game. And unfortunately, as much as I really love the HD upgrade to Chain of Memories, they didn't do it for RE Chain of Memories either. For either the PS3 or the PS4 version, the lip flaps do not match up, and you have these stilted deliveries to the point where it really messes with some of the emotional moments in the game, to the point where, like, again, I thought that Quentin Flynn was a different voice actor at first from PS2, Kingdom Hearts 2, because of the delivery, and it's all in the lip flaps. What people don't understand is that cutting corners really takes you out of the game in the translation department, and it really goes to show that you can have really poor performances from good voice actors if you don't direct it the proper way. It's all in certain scenes that really take it out. For example, the first time Axel shows up, there's some really awkward moments there that really took me out of it. But then the very next time you see Axel, he has these amazing scenes of dialogue where he's talking about your forget that you've forgotten. Like, these scenes show that Quentin Flynn is a fantastic voice actor, and he really delivers. It's just when he has scenes that don't really work with the Japanese lip flaps, it's insanely noticeable, and it for every single character. Granted, the voice actress for Larxene is simply fantastic, and so even though she had problems herself, I thought she was wonderful with this entire thing. Quentin Flynn is great as Axel, even though he had to do some questionable line delivery because of the lip flaps. You have Christopher Lee as Diz. You have Richard Epcar, who is now voicing Ansem, and I'll get to that in a moment, but Richard Epcar was not the original voice actor for Ansem. There were some problems behind the scenes, and the original actor, Billy Zane, was fired, and it's unfortunate because he put his name to a movie that was unpatriotic or something like that. I'm not sure the entire details, but Billy Zane was fantastic as Ansem, and it's unfortunate because it's hard to replace Ansem, but Richard Epcar does a great performance. I have to say this voice cast is really, really good. Although I will say it's unfortunate, but the vocal change between this game and Kingdom Hearts 1 for Sora, Donald, and Goofy is very noticeable. Haley Joel Osment, who plays Sora, it very much went through puberty while in between the voice acting sessions. So, I mean, obviously, have a game coming out in 2002 where, he had a specific voice, and then 2008 when he voice acted these things. And it's understandable for Kingdom Hearts 2 because he'd been sleeping for a year, he's a year older, but it's a little bit jarring to go directly from Kingdom Hearts 1, where he has one voice, and then to Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, where his balls have suddenly dropped. Like, it is very, very noticeable, and I honestly thought the voice actors were different for a second until I looked it up. It's the same voice actors for the same three characters, but you can tell that they've gotten older, especially with Goofy and Sora, because at first their line delivery is a little bit different. And part of that is to do with the lip flaps, like I said before, but they do sound much older, and it is noticeable. I will say that. When I was playing through it, I was tweeting out, and I'm just like, oh, okay. It's not bad line delivery, I will say that much. It's not bad. It's definitely noticeable when you play the games back to back, especially when they have voice acting in them, because these were voice acted at two very different points in times, and they did not change the voice acting from Kingdom Hearts 1 to Kingdom Hearts Final Mix. So it's the same voice actors, the same voice lines. So yeah. With that being said, another thing, minor note before I delve into the story, is that they do something weird at the start of the game, where at the very end of Kingdom Hearts 1, they showcase Sora, Donald, and Goofy in their old clothes, the same clothes that they've been having for a while. Then they change the clothes for the cutscene leading into Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, the trailer there. So they changed their clothes for no reason. Well, get this, they do the same thing at the start of Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories. They have different clothes for no reason, then they enter into the Castle Oblivion, and then all of a sudden they have the clothes for Kingdom Hearts 1 again. And then they change their clothes again. It's very, very weird how they just change clothes for no reason. And granted, they make note of it when they're in the castle, but that doesn't make sense why they would randomly change their clothes from Kingdom Hearts 1 to the beginning of Chain of Memories. It doesn't really mesh. And yeah, this is a nitpick. This is a very minor point, but it really is something that we were joking about in the stream because it's something that it's noticeable and they bring it up, and they didn't have the sense to keep the continuity even within the trailer for the next game. So again, it's a minor point, but I do think it's rather silly. Let's talk about the story. Now, the story of Chain of Memories is split between two characters. Kingdom Hearts 1 was very, very much about Sora and his story and how it related to Riku and Kairi, but it was very much told from Sora's perspective. Here we have two different stories. We have Sora, who's making his way through Castle Oblivion, and then you have Riku, who's also making his way through Castle Oblivion doing his own thing. It starts off with Sora walking through the Realm of Light, they ended up where Sora was in the realm of light, trying to find his way to the king, and Riku and King Mickey were in the realm of darkness. So they're two opposite paths, and this is very symbolic. I'm not sure how literal we're supposed to take this, but this is very symbolic of the path that they both walked. Sora is always pushing towards the light, where Riku finds himself drowning in darkness, trying to find his way out. Very good character things, very good metaphors, but then again, it is something that I'm not sure how they specifically got to where they were after the first game. It's kind of explained with the door to darkness that Riku goes in and seals, but I'm not entirely sure how Sora got to the realm of light. But he is there. That's the path that he found himself on at the end of Kingdom Hearts 1. Anyway, he's walking through the realm of light, and all of a sudden this cloaked figure comes up to him and says that there's something that you seek. It is in this castle, and he shows them the way to Castle Oblivion. In Castle Oblivion, to seek is to find, and to find is to seek. And what that means is, as they go through the floors of Castle Oblivion, Sora is slowly losing his memories one by one to find the true memories that are eluding him, and that's pretty much Sora's story. Riku, on the other hand, finds himself in the basement of Castle Oblivion, and his story is all about breaking away from the darkness, and finding a way to control the darkness within himself. So they're very much Sora's path to the light to defeat the darkness, and Riku's path to control the darkness and find his way to the light. So two opposing characters, and to be honest, I really love this story. The story on its own, when you take, not counting the Disney stuff, and we'll talk about that in a second, but the story, when taken on its own merits, is really good. Despite the vocal, line delivery and the lip flaps and all that other minor stuff, this is really interesting. So, as they move through the castle, slowly, little by little, Sora forgets all the stuff about the Disney world and all his friends, and he starts to focus on this girl named Naminé that he remembers was on the islands along with Kairi and Riku. And eventually, he forgets about Kairi entirely and starts focusing on Naminé, this person who apparently was on the islands with him when he was a kid. Now, this is intriguing stuff, because while we saw a little bit of the stuff on the islands, we didn't know everything, so one could make the assumption that Naminé was there on the islands, he just forgot about them. And they make a very clear point from the beginning of the game to say that it's Castle Oblivion that's causing this. Marluxia and Axel say that Castle Oblivion is causing them to forget. Every single floor, they lose a little bit of memories. Every single floor, they find out a little bit more of the true memories. And a lot of the early floors, while they are pretty much a retread of the Disney world, try to use this motif in some way, where the characters talk about memory and how if you forget something, but you don't know that you've forgotten it, your memories play tricks on you. So it's like someone could make you think of something being there, even if it didn't actually happen, because you can't remember it, but your mind starts to play tricks on you. You've forgotten that you've forgotten, and that's the trick here. And Axel says a lot of really interesting stuff throughout the castle about when you find out the true memories, you might not be the same person that you were before, meaning that your memories alter who you are. Your memories make up your perspective. And I find the concept of memories in this game for Sora very interesting, because we always see Sora as this naive, but good-natured, good-hearted person. And throughout this game, we slowly strip away the layers, and we see what's important to him, but he slowly forgets what's really important, as all he does is focus and fixate on Naminé, to the point where he actually starts yelling at Donald and Goofy, something that Sora never does. Sora never gets angry in the other games, not at his friends, and so we have this really great character development, character interaction, where we see what Sora would be like if he didn't have his friends or his memories, and what memories do to make up a person. As he makes his way through the castle, he slowly defeats the members of this organization, which we don't know what the organization is all about, but they want to use Sora for their own purposes. And they have individual villains guarding different floors. Obviously, you have Axel, Marluxia, who are running the show pretty much. Marluxia is the keeper of the castle, but Axel's pretty high up, it seems. And then there's this sadistic girl named Vexin, who is a lot of fun and is totally waifu material. Don't at me. And then there's this scientist named Vexin, who's all very scientific, very much, all he cares about is data and wanting to experiment on different things. And he doesn't see Sora as interesting. He actually wants Riku. And so there's all this stuff going on with him, but these are the forces that are opposing Sora. The main story with Sora really comes to a head near the end of the game, where you find out, because Vexin blabs it, that Naminé was the one who's been messing with Sora's memories the entire time. He has never met Naminé before. Like, she is a... they call her a witch, but we won't find out until later what she actually is all about. But, like, there's some really, really, really good stuff here where all the things that we thought we knew were lies, because Naminé can actually manipulate people's memories. That's one of her abilities. And so, as they've been going through the castle, she's been rearranging the links of the chain of his memories, title drop, and slowly inserting herself in there so that he fights only for Naminé and serves the organization. To which point Sora realizes that he's been manipulated, his memories are entirely fake, but he still tries to protect Naminé from the people who are trying to use her, because Naminé only did it because she was lonely. She never had any friends, and she's been trapped in this castle her entire life. So he fights all the villains, he defeats every single member of the organization besides Axel, and then he goes into a pod where he will sleep for an entire year to regain his memories. And he chose to do this because he wants to remember his friends, but he made a promise to Naminé that he would thank her and become her friend when he wakes up. I love Sora's campaign because it very much deconstructs the character of Sora. And here, he's not just a naive, happy-go-lucky, innocent person. He has faults. He has problems. He is blinded by his own ambition and by the promise that he thinks he made to Naminé, and that really messes with him. And he loses, for a little bit, he loses Donald and Goofy as friends. He abandons them, kind of like how they did in the first game, in a nice parallel. He abandons his friends in order to pursue Naminé, and there's really great character development. And when he finally figures out that he's been manipulated the entire time, he doesn't just cast Naminé away. He says, the memories may be fake, but they feel real and they don't feel wrong. So I'm going to honor them. I'm going to honor my feelings. It's an interesting way of dealing with this, and I don't think Riku would have done it the same way. Another interesting development is that Vexin makes a clone of Riku that you meet throughout like several floors of the game. You fight him 4 different times, and you don't know it's a clone of Riku until the end of the game. And that's another big gut punch, because Riku kind of goes back to a state from Kingdom Hearts 1, where he's only opposing Sora because he doesn't think he's protecting the person that he cares about. But instead of Kairi, he's talking about Naminé this time, which is kind of a red flag because we don't know anything about Naminé. How does he? It turns out it's a data replica, a replica that Vexin made from data of Riku, that has all the powers, all the memories, although Naminé has messed with his memories too, so he only thinks about Naminé. And it's a nice dark reflection of what Sora could have been, blindly following these fake memories and opposing everything simply because he thinks that what he's doing is right. And it shows that for all his good intentions, Sora has faults. Sora has a lot of flaws because blindly following good could lead you to helping evil people, can really help you fall in the trap of evil people, and Sora does that immediately in this game, and it showcases the problems with that, and I like that. It's a very good deconstruction of Sora, but it also shows the good points of Sora's heart. No matter who wrongs him, he always looks for the good in people. He always looks for the good in everyone else, and so I really liked what they did with the story. I like that at the end of the game, he didn't hate Naminé. He was all for Naminé. And honestly, Sora has the best villains. Vexin is in both campaigns, and he has a face that you really want to punch. But Axel is just so much fun. Axel is basically a person who's double-crossing everyone. He pretends to work with Marluxia, who, as I said, is the keeper of Castle Oblivion and runs most of the stuff here. But Marluxia wants to overtake the rest of the organization that we don't see until Kingdom Hearts 2. He wants to stage his own coup with Larxene. So Axel is investigating this, pretends to work with the rogue organization members, takes out Vexin when Vexin is lured to basically attack Sora for Marluxia to get on his good side. And as soon as he gets on Marluxia's good side, he lets Naminé go free. And then he slowly takes out these rogue organization members one by one. He uses Sora and Riku to betray both sides of that organization just so that he can serve himself and his own ambitions for the true organization, or other things that we will learn in 358 over 2 days. Basically, he's doing this all to get Saïx to move up in rank, and we'll meet Saïx later, so I'll explain that. But Axel is just double and triple crossing everyone, and he's the only one who makes it out alive in the end, and I found him a very interesting character. You also have Larxene, who, again, is a sadist, but she just has so much fun, and she's just so well-voiced, and just her personality is off the charts, so I love her. I love her character. She is one of those characters that you love to hate, but in a fun way. Like, she's definitely one of those that, you know, I had so much fun watching her do evil. She's very enjoyable evil, and every time you fought her, it was a fun time. Although Sora does defeat her at the end, and she fades into the darkness, so I don't know if she's going to come back. We will see. Marluxia, on the other hand, never really reveals his motivations. I'm not entirely sure why he wants to overthrow the organization. I can wager a guess from what I've learned a little bit later down the line, but I'm not really going to. All I know is that he wants to use Sora and Naminé for his own personal gain to overthrow the rest of the organization that we don't see in this game. He is a very pretty boy. I love his design, but I kind of wish there was more explanation for his character, why he's doing it. But he's just so fun to watch either way that I don't really care. Vexin, as I said before, is very scientific, but he has a face that you want to punch. They really did a great job with his expressions. He's always smirking, he's always grinning, and he's another character that's fun to hate, but in a different way than Larxene. Larxene I just had fun with, but he, like, every time he appeared on screen, I just wanted to punch him in his smug face. The boss fights in this side of the campaign was really interesting as well, because the organization members all have a very different way of fighting. They all have their strengths and weaknesses, and I think that's a really good strength of Chain of Memories, is that the bosses are all well thought out. Axel wields the power of fire, so he's weak to ice, but he also likes to teleport around the battlefield, so even if you use strong magic or stuff like that, he can sometimes teleport away from it, which I thought was really, really cool. I love his chakram weapons. I think he's a fantastic boss. Loved fighting him. For Vexin, his caveat is that you can't attack him unless you break one of his cards. And I'll get into the battle system later, but he has this ultimate guard ability that I really, really liked. He is a bitch to fight because every single time you want to damage him, you have to either break one of his cards or you have to attack him with fire. So you really have to strategize. Even if you use fire attacks, it's not 100% effective because he has room clearing special attacks. It was a very fun fight, and I really liked that. Larxene uses lightning, and I really liked that because she doesn't have any visible weaknesses. Physical attacks are usually the best thing to use against her, but she has this thing called Teleport Rush. Basically spams teleports around the room, attacks you 3 hits, and then you're stunned, and then she keeps teleporting. So she can be easy to like damage and attack, but she has very powerful quick attacks. She's very quick, and she also has these room clearing lightning attacks, and you don't have anything to counter it. So I thought this was a great balanced fight. I liked Larxene in battle. Marluxia was a very interesting final boss. I really liked what they did with the design. He's another one who can teleport, but he doesn't always do so. He always likes these flowy cherry blossom style attacks. He has a scythe, and he has a lot of range. So he likes to go far away and attack you. And so you really have to get close in, attack him, quick hit combos, get out of the way. So he has his own strategy, but he also has not one, but 2 other forms. The second form is this gigantic, it almost feels like the ending Heartless in Kingdom Hearts 1, but not quite as big, but it's like he's in this vehicle that has like 2 scythes, and you have to damage each of them, and he has these huge room clearing attacks. Like, this is a very gigantic final boss. And I thought it was a lot of fun, although you can pretty easily stop his attacks with card breaks. Again, I'll kind of get to the card battle system in a little bit. And then you have the final boss battle against him, where he actually steals your cards and scatters them, and you have to rush to collect them, and it brings a new idea to the battle system. Because up until this point, even if if you had a good deck, you could win. But here, he pretty much says, you know what, your cards are gone, and then he starts spamming some really, really big attacks. So you have to hurry up, gather your cards, and attack him. So, boss fight-wise, I had a lot of fun with Sora's campaign. Story-wise, I had a lot of fun with Sora's campaign. The biggest problem, though, is the Disney worlds and how they integrate, which is pretty much, they don't. The Disney worlds are superfluous. They tried to put in a few small things about memory, and say Alice in Wonderland with the Queen forgetting and you tricking her, and stuff like that, but it doesn't really appear very often, and most of these worlds are just retreads of stuff from Kingdom Hearts 1. Let's be honest, there are only 2 new worlds. Everything else is pulled from Kingdom Hearts 1, and that is a big shame. That is not something that should have been done. First of all, you have everything is returning except for Tarzan, which they lost the license because Edgar Wright Burroughs did not give them the license after Kingdom Hearts 1. I don't know if he didn't like Kingdom Hearts 1 or if the license expired, but they never got it back, and they can't use Tarzan ever again. I did like Tarzan in Kingdom Hearts 1, so I'm not really complaining, but it's kind of interesting. So that's the only world that's not really returning, but obviously you have Monstro, you have Traverse Town, you have all the major worlds back from the first game, and you're retreading the same storylines. The only new worlds are Twilight Town, which you don't know what it's all about, and you won't know until Kingdom Hearts 2, so there's really no reason for it to be there, aside from some slight story reasons, foreshadowing stuff in Kingdom Hearts 2. And then there's Castle Oblivion, which is just where you are, and it's bland. So, to be honest, the Disney World stuff was a huge detriment. Not just story, but atmosphere. It felt very redundant. It felt like it didn't need to be there. And in a story that's as good as this really pulled me out of it, because you keep going back to worlds you've already been before to retread old ground, and it's just not necessary. This almost feels like DLC for Kingdom Hearts 1, setting up events of Kingdom Hearts 2, and while it is a very good overarching story for the stuff with Sora and Riku, which I'll get into in a bit, it feels very redundant. It feels very much like setup, because you don't learn a lot about these organization members. They're interesting personality-wise, but you don't really learn too much about why they're doing what they're doing, and we won't find out for a little bit, not until Kingdom Hearts 2 and a little bit of 358 over 2 days. So it's really good foreshadowing, really good setup. Like, there's points in the dialogue that really set up Kingdom Hearts 2. For example, Vexin says, you could say that I'm a nobody, perhaps, they say these cryptic things that won't make sense until Kingdom Hearts 2. And if you're paying attention, and if you played Kingdom Hearts 2, this makes a lot of sense, and it fills in a lot of gaps. But it really does the cryptic stuff a lot, and if you're trying to make sense out of this, it won't make sense until Kingdom Hearts 2. Still, overall, I liked it. I just kind of wish that the Disney stuff wasn't there. If you're going to make this a DLC, I wish they would have kind of stripped it out to the 13 floors of the castle. You're fighting the bosses in maybe a little bit more. That way they didn't have to strip away your abilities to make this game happen. But, overall, it's a solid B plot. It's not an A because there's definite problems, but it's a solid B plot-wise for Sora. Riku, on the other hand, is a definite A. Riku's campaign is all about him dealing with the darkness in his heart, and the worlds that he go to actually matter because none of his friends are there. The only people in it are the bosses that Sora faced, the darkness. The first person you see, you go to Hollow Bastion first, and you see Maleficent, and she's the only person there. You actually get the chance to see where he stayed in the castle of Hollow Bastion, and see the accommodations, and the entire time, the voice of Ansem is spurning Riku onward, saying, you have to give into the darkness. Remember, you spurned everything for the darkness. You gave up your friends, like everything you cared about for this dark power, and you're casting it aside now. And the reason why he doesn't see anyone is because his heart only knows how to cast people away. His campaign is a lot shorter, but when you actually get to Riku's campaign after you beat Sora's, there's some really, really interesting story bits here. Characterizations about how Riku regrets every action that he made, and he only did it because he wanted to save his friends, but now he realizes what a mistake it is, and he cast away the darkness, but he can't seem to break away from the control of Ansem. Now, you might be wondering, how is Ansem alive if we defeated him in the first game? Well, he's not. There's two things to note here. First of all, there is a piece of Ansem's lingering will in Riku's heart. The best example I can give is that when he was possessed by Ansem, a little bit of Ansem is left stuck inside Riku. It is a piece of Ansem that has its own will and will not go away. Let's say a piece of Ansem's heart, if you will. So he has been corrupted by Ansem, and while he keeps trying to fight against the shadow of Ansem that is inside him, he just simply doesn't seem to be able to win. But then there's also the voice of Ansem that's been guiding him this entire time. However, as he finally makes his way through the castle and fights through all the darkness and realizes that he can control the darkness within him, because basically Riku's revelation throughout this entire campaign is that he doesn't have to just be about darkness or light. The best thing for him to do, because he can control darkness, but he's afraid of it, the best thing for him to do is to walk both paths. The middle road, the road of twilight, the road where he utilizes both darkness and light. Basically, they describe this as him not fearing the darkness so that he can stare into it and use it, but not fearing the light because the light will also help him as well. And he realizes that he can do both. After this revelation, after he finally decides to utilize both the darkness and the light and oppose Ansem, he realizes that the voice that's been spurning him forward this entire time isn't actually Ansem. So obviously he has the shadow of Ansem inside him, but this person smells different. And it's a little bit awkward, I know, but basically he can sense the presence of darkness and can tell who each person is by their presence. The way they word it is scent, but I feel like sense is a better word. He can sense it's not Ansem. And so this person reveals himself to be Diz. We don't know anything about him at this point in time. We don't know what his deal is. We don't know anything until Kingdom Hearts 2. But it's someone that the king knows. And the king has been popping up every now and again. He's still in the realm of darkness, but he sends his energy to help Riku in battle. But anyway, they finally find out this guy is Diz. King Mickey knows him somehow, but he doesn't know why. And he has a face that's very reminiscent of Ansem. He has the same yellow eyes and dark skin. And at first, you're wondering, like, well, no wonder we thought it was Ansem. He looks very similar, even though he's covered in bandages. So we don't really know what the deal is yet. More foreshadowing. But the crux of this is that Riku has to decide whether to fight the darkness inside his heart or have Naminé lock his heart. So basically, she can use her memory manipulation to lock his heart so that he'll forget Sora, but Ansem will never get out. And he chooses to fight Ansem and wins. Now, this is taking place at the exact same time as Sora's campaign, which is why there's actually crossover between it. Riku first encounters the Riku replica before Sora does, and then later on in the game, the Riku replica comes back and you fight him one final time and defeat him. Riku versus Riku. And Vexin comes in to scout you out, take your data, that sort of thing. So like every campaign is happening back to back. And so when Marluxia is defeated, and Sora's in the pod, is when you finally defeat the Riku replica and you meet up with Naminé for the first time, which is why Naminé is free and overseeing Sora's development. The other thing that takes place in this is that there's two other villains in the basement of Castle Oblivion that Riku has to face. In addition to Vexin, which doesn't really add anything new to Riku's campaign aside from creating the Riku replica, there's Lexaeus and Zexion, and to be fair, I think they're the weakest part of this campaign. I really love Riku's character development, and I think Riku's character arc and story is actually better than Sora's, as much as I like Sora's. I would give Riku's campaign a solid A, especially because it's more streamlined, but Lexaeus and Zexion have no personality. Lexaeus has this weird face, like it's a square-jawed, ugly face that I just want to punch. I did a poll on Twitter before I finished the game, and I asked who you would most want to punch, and Vexin won, but I still think Lexaeus has the most punchable face in this entire series. I hate his design, and he's supposed to be this noble hero, and basically he wants to use Riku to take down Marluxia because Marluxia is betraying them. But Riku doesn't know this, and he could have just asked Riku to help him. And so, if he's this noble hero, why doesn't he just say, hey, Riku, I know you're probably not going to trust me, but there's this guy, Marluxia, who's trying to use Sora to do evil things. If he said Sora was in trouble, Riku might not have believed him at first, but, he doesn't believe Ansem, and he still continues forward with his quest. So that I was just like, I don't like Luxeus. Zexion is even worse because he doesn't do anything. He spends his entire time in the basement tracking down the intruders in the castle. He can sense when Riku's there, and he's the one informing everyone. That's his entire purpose. And the only thing that he does when Luxeus is defeated is he uses illusions to try to trick Riku into thinking that Sora hates him, much like how Vexin uses the Riku replica to make Riku think make Sora think Riku hates him. It's a very big parallel, but I think the Riku replica worked so much better because you didn't know it wasn't the real Riku. Here, it was an illusion that Riku could see through because he could sense the presence of darkness, and obviously it wasn't Sora. It worked well for what it was, but I don't think... I just don't like Zexion as a character because we don't know anything about him. I don't know what his deal is. He seems to be working with Axel, but Axel betrays him at the end because he knew too much. And I kind of wish that Zexion had been in on things, had understood what was going on, because otherwise we just have him in the basement talking to himself and people who randomly pop in. It's... As Some Call Me Johnny said, that does not make for compelling storytelling. The stuff on Sora's campaign, at least these characters were talking about things that we understood, and they all had purpose. They were all defying this organization, and they wanted to use Sora. That made sense. And while Vexin kind of did his own thing, and so did Axel, every single bit of it made sense. Here, I don't get Zexion or Luxeus' deal, and apparently we won't understand that until later on down the line. I have not played Birth by Sleep or Dream Drop Distance, so I don't know. We'll see when we get to that, but the biggest issue in Riku's campaign, which is still a solid A, is the villains that he's dealing with, aside from Ansem, which is a fantastic fight and a great villain. Him basically fighting the inner darkness in his heart and realizing that while Ansem still lingers inside of him at the end, and it will always try to get control, he still has the ability to keep fighting and keep going on, and he doesn't have to fear the darkness or the light. I love that about his campaign. Riku stuff, really compelling, very bad villains, and... on the other side of the coin, though, the boss battles that Riku faces are really, really cool. Luxeus is a very interesting boss fight because he has massive amounts of strength. He wields the element of earth, which means he's super strong. He wields this gigantic, claymore-like sword, and as the fight goes on, he slowly makes himself stronger. So the longer you take in the fight, the easier it is for him to pound you into dust. And I thought this idea was really, really interesting. You really have to strategize and work, because on Riku's campaign, you don't get to choose which cards you bring into battle. Everything is random. So the only things that you can level up in Riku's campaign are his health and the darkness attacks he can do and his attack power. So you really have to strategize and focus on the bosses, and I really like this fight. Zexion, as much as I hate his character because he doesn't do anything, is the best boss fight in Riku's campaign. I don't know how this happened, but he is a character that utilizes illusions. His weapon is a lexicon, which is a book, and originally I thought that was going to be lame, because who fights someone with a book? No, what he really does in the campaign is really brilliant. He uses the magic of illusions. That's his power, which means he can steal your cards and use them to attack you, use them against you. So you have to destroy the illusion lexicons that he brings to the table. And the longer that he goes through the campaign, the more cards he can steal from you, the stronger that he becomes. And so you really have to strategize. And I loved this boss fight. It's really a shame, though, because I don't know anything about Zexion. I don't know who you are. I don't know what your deal is. You seem like a nice guy. I think you have a pretty face, but I don't know who you are. I will say I like Zexion's design. He's very emo with a pretty girl face, but that's all I know. So Riku's campaign, solid A. Sora's is a B because the Disney worlds don't factor into anything. They actually factor into Riku's campaign. And Riku's campaign has some really good stuff, really good boss fights. The only problem are the villains themselves. So that's the story. It is really interesting. It really is worth a watch. If you don't want to play this game, and I'll understand why when I talk about the card system, just go look at the cutscenes on YouTube. There's a compilation. It doesn't have everything because there's some really good interaction on Riku's campaign that takes place outside of the cutscenes. But if you really want to get the gist of the story and you don't want to play the game, then watch the full movie that's on YouTube. It is really, really good at catching you up to speed. With that being said, let's talk about the cards. Yeah, this is a card game. This game is focused on a card battle system, and I don't know why. I guess it was popular at the time because this wasn't the only one that did it. Metal Gear Solid did it. There were definitely a few games at the time, for whatever reason, that just changed the battle system to cards for the system of the day. I don't know why. It doesn't make sense in universe either, because all of a sudden they go to Castle Oblivion, he gives him a card, his friends are transformed into cards, and so you can only use them in battle. It's never explained why, though, and the whole time during the stream I'm like, but why, though? But why? But why, though? Why are they cards? Why can't he remember any of his attacks? It's amusing that once they enter the castle, Donald tries to fire a thunder spell, and he can't because he doesn't remember his attacks. But how can he remember the name Thunder and not know how to do the spell like he did before? It just doesn't make sense. Like, it would make more sense if they said once you enter the castle, your abilities are locked away into, so if he had forgotten them, then he shouldn't have said Thunder. If it was something else, it would have made more sense. I don't know. The aesthetic doesn't mesh with the game world. Like, it really doesn't. It doesn't feel like Kingdom Hearts. I'm so used to running around, beating people up with a giant key in a free-roaming style combat system, and here we are, free-roaming around, yes, but now we have to adjust cards just to fight? How do I need a card to remember how to bash your face in with a key? How does that make sense? I don't even know. And out of universe, it doesn't make sense why they would do this outside of the popularity of that system. I don't get it. But if you take the time to learn it, it's okay. It really does have a lot of depth to the card system. There's a lot of stuff that you can do. For example, you have different attack cards, item cards, and spell cards. Your attack cards can be combined into giant slites for abilities like you did in the first game, kind of like Ars Arcanum and stuff like that. Or you can use single cards. You can break your opponent's cards if your cards are of a higher value. And, you can set up your deck with Sora so that any single attack is the way you want it. You can stock up on 9 cards, which will beat anything but a 0. But, 0 cards aren't all they're cracked up to be because they can beat by any single card. So you either stock up on 9 cards and really win, or you stock up on some zeros because the enemies can use sleights as well. So if your card combination is not enough to break their sleight, you use 0 cards. But yeah, I either stocked up on 9 cards, level 9 cards, or I would use zeros, or I would use sleights, because sleights are a little bit overpowered in this game. When you get the Sonic Blade Sleight, it's like the game pretty much plays itself, because like the first 2 to 3, maybe 4 hours of the game is the most grueling, because you don't have any worthwhile cards, and enemies can break your cards like nothing, and it's so damn frustrating. It's exhausting. It is a slog to get through, and I can't believe they made it this way, because that's the first impression you get of a game. The first few hours of a game is what you get to entice people, and they made it so that the system is very, very hard to get into. And it's not like it's a horrible system. Once you get the hang of it, once you get good cards, you'll start breaking their card in no time. And the thing is, a card break is a stun. When someone breaks your card, you're stunned momentarily. When you break an enemy's card, they're stunned. And it's stupid to look at, because someone all the way across the room could be attacking you with a lightning spell, and you just put down a card and they stop. Like they've been hit by something. It's weird, but it also, it does kind of alleviate some of the annoyances I had in Kingdom Hearts 1, where the wizards would go into their thunder state and you couldn't attack them. You can break that with cards now, and that actually makes sense. But that makes bosses a joke, okay? If you have level 9 high cards, then you can break their attack easily, and they're vulnerable. If they use sleights, you break out a 0 card, or you use sleights of your own. With Sora's campaign, you can set your deck however you want, and you get sleights like Lethal Frame, which freezes them in their tracks and does a bar or more of damage to the enemy. That is OP. Mega Flare is OP. Sonic Blade, they can't even attack you. You can stun lock them. So if you set up your sleights in such a way where you have sleight 0 card to break any attacks, sleight 0 card, they won't be able to touch you. And so it is very easy to break this game, to the point where even Marluxia on Proud with the final boss, I would just be breaking his attacks. He didn't pose any threat, and the thing that was actually the most threatening was Vexin, because you had to time when you attacked because of his guard ability. I honestly thought Vexin was probably one of the more challenging boss fight of Sora's campaign because of it. But the card battle system, its major problem is how they balance it and the pacing of the game. Because it starts off as a slog, you get good cards, and then all of a sudden you're winning. You're winning all the fights. And then as you slowly progress, like the first 4 worlds, extremely easy once you get good cards, and then the difficulty just spikes out of nowhere, and you have to go and grind and get more good cards simply because the difficulty is arbitrary, not because of strategy. And there is strategy in this system. If they had just made the challenge a little bit better balanced, to the point where if you kept going to new worlds, it's slightly scaled up and the anime AI was better, maybe I wouldn't have as many complaints as I do. But it gets to the point where, like, I got past the slog portion of the tutorial, then I start having fun, and I'm like, oh, I think I'm having Stockholm Syndrome because I'm actually liking the gameplay. And then all of a sudden it gets really hard for no damn reason, and they keep breaking your cards again. It's so frustrating, because I know there's a good game in this battle system underneath it all, but it's not built for this card battle system. It really isn't. When you have good cards at your disposal that you have to spend all your time grinding for, it becomes fun, but after like a while you just become OP. I spammed Lethal Frame so many times in Proud mode that, like, it was over 700 times that I used this to beat bosses, and it was OP. And then when that didn't work, I would spam Mega Flare. In later campaigns, I spammed Mega Flare so much it was over 900. What, 900? Like, seriously, it got to the point where I would just keep using slights because they were so overpowered. And so it's like this card battle system is good in theory. It just really needed more work. This was clearly rushed out on a system that they wanted to promote just so that they could have something before the next game, but it was out way too soon because this battle system is not balanced. It is very easy to break, and it is very easy to turn into a grind as you just grind for the cards you need. And it's not made any better because you have to use cards to open doors. The layout of each world is not like open. It's basically a grid, and you use cards, world cards, to open doors. And you use map cards to set what's going to be in the room. Now, on paper, this is actually kind of fun because you can choose what room to open as long as you meet the criteria that's on the card. The biggest problem with this is that every single place feels the same. While they even have different layouts, especially in RE Chain of Memories, it becomes exhausting because it all feels the same, and none of it feels like it matters. It feels just like you're doing it to grind out levels, and it ends up feeling just unimportant. None of it feels like it has any character. Kind of like the randomly designed dungeons in Persona 4. They do have a theme, but after a while, like, you're slogging through these randomly generated hallways, and it just feels very exhausting. It feels like it takes forever. That's the same feeling here. It's good that you can pick and choose what you want the room to be, but after a while, it really gets old because none of it's designed. Kingdom Hearts 1 had designed worlds, and they felt much more genuine, and I loved going to them. Even Deep Jungle more than this game. Riku, on the other hand, does not have a deck. You can't pick and choose, so you can't break the game with it. And so I found his campaign both good and both better and worse because of this. Now, it doesn't have the problem of balancing in that same way because they give you the cards that you need for the task at hand, but they don't put the worlds in the proper order, and your cards are random, so you can't pick and choose, and you won't have any healing cards until later on in the game. Basically, King Mickey is the only healing card, but he only appears at random. So it can be a little bit harder. I kind of found Riku to be the hard mode of the game because you have a set deck, you can't break the game, and there are often times where you're put in a world that it gives you weaker cards than the cards you had in a previous world. How does that work? Because you start off in Hollow Bastion and you have pretty good cards, and then you go to Traverse Town and you don't have any good cards. It is really weird that they don't put this in ascending order at all. It's just random, and sometimes you'll have good cards and sometimes you won't. It's so weird to me. I don't even know what they were thinking with that. But the good thing about having random cards is that it makes the boss fights that much more challenging and fun. And when you actually break out his darkness mode, you can do some really cool slides, and you don't have to worry about your cards going away because you can reload your deck as many times as you want. Sora can only reload his deck slowly unless you have specific item cards. But here, Riku can reload as many times he wants. He has this darkness mode where he gets extra powerful that you can beef up. And he also has a duel mode where if you break the opponent's cards a certain amount of time, you go into this massive attack. So he has better abilities, and it's a lot more fun in that regard, and his campaign is shorter. So the gameplay I find a little bit better there. But really, what is up with the balancing in this game? The fact that, like, Sora's problem was that it just kept upping the difficulty like you're facing a cliff. Here, it's like you're on a roller coaster where all of a sudden it's easy, all of a sudden it's hard, all of a sudden it's this or that or the other thing, and it just... I want to like this game because I know people really love it. And to be fair, there are things that I really do love about it. I love the lore, I love what they do with the villains, I love some of the gameplay. But it really ultimately felt like a slog to get through, and it doesn't help because of the completionist requirements. I platinumed this game. I have the platinum trophy. I put 241 hours of my time into this game, and 60 of those hours were grinding. 60 of these hours were spent getting all the cards, getting Riku to level 99, which you can beat Riku's campaign at level 50, and it takes 33 hours to get him to level 99. Oh my god. Like, I like to complete games. I'm a completionist. I got through Kingdom Hearts 1. Okay, there were minor annoyances, but don't complete this game. Don't complete this game, because in addition to all of the grinding, the slog, the exhaustion of just completing this game, it lasts so long to the point where I was just ready to throw the disc away into the sunset. But I did it. But the worst part is that the cards and everything else are locked under specific conditions. For example, in order to get all the cards, you first have to watch the cutscenes on the 1.5 collection for 358 over 2 days, which doesn't make sense, because if you're playing this game, you're going to want to play Chain of Memories first, because 358 over 2 days takes place from the beginning of Kingdom Hearts 1 and ends right before Kingdom Hearts 2, but it only makes sense if you've played Chain of Memories first. So in order to do it, you have to play Chain of Memories, then go watch the cutscenes to get all the cards, and then play through Riku's campaign, because Riku's campaign unlocks more cards than Sora's campaign. And no, it's not like something that unlocks based on how far you are or having a clear save file. Each difficulty locks things away. So you can't beat Riku in Sora's normal mode and then go to Proud and expect the cards to be unlocked. No, that's too easy. Everything, all your progress is specifically locked to one difficulty. So if you're playing the game on normal, you have to 100% that normal. So you play through Sora's campaign, you watch 358 over 2 days, you play Riku's campaign, then you go right back to Sora's, and then you can grind all the cards, because everything is locked under that. Even minor stuff, like, say, Moogle points. You get a trophy for spending specific Moogle points at the store. If you spend a certain amount of Moogle points on normal, that doesn't carry over to Proud. So if you're playing, you have to spend all your time on one difficulty. And now, I wouldn't have any problem with this, or as much of a problem with this as I should say, except the game wants you to play multiple different files and difficulties, because, get this, the difficulty trophies do not stack. You can't just play the game on Proud mode and get all the difficulty trophies. No. You have to play this game 6 times. 3 campaigns for Sora, 3 campaigns for Riku. And that goes against everything that they want you to do with the different campaigns. Like, they want you to keep going in between Sora and Riku's campaign to unlock different things and 358 over 2 days, but they don't let you go to different difficulties afterwards just to test yourself as you get these cards. It's already a slog to get through to get the 100%, but dear motherfucking God, I was ready to lose it. I spaced this over 2 months. The 241 hours over 2 months, and even that was too much for me. So don't complete this game. Don't do it. Watch the cutscenes online, or if you really want to play this game, play on normal or beginner. The beginner campaign only lasts 14 hours for Sora and 7 hours for Riku. If you're playing on normal, it's 40 hours for Sora and 25 for Riku. It doesn't make any sense, because it's the grind that's added. It's not about difficulty being added here. It's about arbitrarily padding out the game time And I know not everyone's gonna do this, not everyone's a completionist, but just, you know, if you're gonna play through the game, just know that it gets exhausting after a while. If I were to judge these games based on the base stats, not counting the completionist, I think I would give Kingdom Hearts 1 a solid A, and I would give Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories a solid C. Because while there's a lot of stuff that I really do like, the card battle system, the grind, everything really brings it down to the point where a good story can't really save this game. It's a good story, possibly even a great story, bogged down by a slog of gameplay. And if I was to judge it on completionist level, I would give Kingdom Hearts 1 a B for completion status. It's not that bad. And I would give this an F. Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories do not complete. Unless you're crazy like I am, but even then, just know you're in for one hell of a bad time. Still, I did enjoy my time with this game. I think it's definitely a worthwhile entry in the franchise. I wish they hadn't done the battle system the way they did, but it is the way it is the way it is. It's not something I can change. So the best advice that I would give, watch the cutscenes online. It's very important. If you like what you see, play it on a lower difficulty just to get through the slog a little bit faster. I know that's like saying, oh, put the training wheels on, and I'm not saying it like that. I'm not saying it to be demeaning, because some people just want to play it for the story. And if you do just want to play it for the story, for the love of God, play on a lower difficulty just to make things faster, is all I'm saying. With all that being said, I still think this game is worth your time. Just remember that there's a lot of problems, and it really has not aged as well as Kingdom Hearts 1 has. This is probably the low point so far to me. Not in story, but in terms of gameplay and just the amount of time doing things that are unnecessary to pad out the game. Anyway, I am Zenith Rule, and I will see all of you guys in the future when I complete 358 over 2 days, and I find out what happened with the organization during Kingdom Hearts 1 and Chain of Memories. See you guys then, and don't forget to pick up a better game than I just platinumed. Have a good one, guys.
Hey, this is Megami33. Thank you for watching Zenith Will Review. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more awesome videos. If you like what you see, check out the Patreon page at patreon.com/ZenithWillReview.